age of 10.
Tomorrow is Nane Nane. Today, though, let's first of all begin by acknowledging and appreciating is the 7th of August, and we mark what happened on the 7th of August in 1998 when the bomb blast took place in the center of Nairobi. And that was one time when people were just shocked and ushered into this wave of global terrorism. Many people died, many people lost their lives in your city.
And many lives were changed forever. And even the memory of it is something that should remind us of what it is that happens when one loses touch with the reality for just for a second, a single second. Intelligence was received, it was communicated, it was not heeded.
Yep. That's the story in the nation today. That Brigadier Boynet and then NSIS had actually sent an urgent telegram to the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi 10 days before the bomb blast.
10 days.
Yeah, and said something is afoot.
And by that time, the embassy was bang in the middle of town, actually. Yes.
Question that one would ask, though, is, okay, the National Intelligence Service is giving this brief to the U.S. Embassy. It should also have given a brief to the country's security system. What did the country's security system do to thwart this, to try and avert it? The U.S. Embassy would only deal with the U.S. Embassy compound.
The problem with the learning curve that we have, or the learning process, somehow it's a tragedy that awakens people to the reality of what they ought to have done.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
It was only after 9/11 that the U.S. government, for instance, decided to take certain precautions, and the intelligence and the security apparatus now beefed up the way they do things, and they revolutionized even the way they looked at intelligence. Prior to that, one could argue they had seen no need to do that, isn't it? We'd never had a bomb attack in this country. Oh, wait.
Well, there was one at the Norfolk.
There was one at the Norfolk, and there was one even at OTC.
OTC, yes.
Yes. But not of this magnitude.
Yeah. So, tomorrow, Nane Nane. If the youth and others who are supporting the youth at heart, decide to come out for this round of demonstrations, the police have said they're adequately prepared.
What are they prepared for exactly?
That's the thing. What are we likely to see? How safe are the protesters who intend to come out tomorrow? If intelligence is there that maybe there'll be infiltration, what are the intelligence and the security agencies doing to make sure that it's not infiltrated, that it remains peaceful, and that the peaceful protesters are protected? That's why we've invited Grace Wangeshi. She is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. Grace, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Karibu to the hot seat of the situation.
Yes, thank you.
You're looking good, you're looking well. And that goes into the conversation that I wanted to start with you. This is about medical health checkups.
Yeah.
Annual health checkups. Yeah. Do you follow those ones religiously?
Yes, I do.
Every year, right? You try as much as possible.
I need to do better.
Yes. That's the message that the Aga Khan University Hospital is actually saying. They're saying, let's all do better. Let's make sure that we plan and schedule regular medical checkups.
Yes, we should.
They say for as low as 9,950, you can walk to any Aga Khan University Hospital clinic and you say, I want a comprehensive medical checkup, and they will do it. Just checking and seeing that you're okay. And if you're not okay, then you start getting straight into how to get better. And also you're advised. So what do? This is let's look at your diet. Let's look at your exercise regimen. Let's look at the kind of lifestyle that you're leading. You sit for too long. You talk too much. Those kind of things. Mdomo yako. So 9,950. Message home, Aga Khan University Hospital. There is one, I'm sure where you live, not far, you will find an Aga Khan University Hospital Center facility. So you don't have to go to Limuru Road. You can go to the one closer to you.
Great offer.
Okay. Now, CT will give you the day's proverb. This week, last week, and next week, It's proverbs from landlocked countries of Africa. You're trying to think of which landlocked country you know. Not Uganda, which other one?
There are many. Let me hear what surprise he has for me.
Okay.
That is a lesson in how to avoid answering a question.
We'll be back.
We will be back. We have a whole hour here.
I can't wait.
Okay. Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Republic of Botswana. Okay? An extremely interesting country. Okay? Have a population of 2.4 million, believe it or not. 70% of the country is desert. Amazing. Don't laugh at the fallen, for the slippery path is still ahead.
Don't laugh at the fallen,
Yes.
for the slippery path is still ahead.
Interesting. Don't laugh at the fallen, for the slippery path is still ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I guess it could speak to a lot of things.
Yes.
One is that you're not too far off as well. If you see your neighbor, somebody going through a tough time, don't sit and enjoy it and watch from afar and think that it will not, that someday you'll not get into a situation where you will need somebody to help you out. So I think it just reminds us that we need to be watchful of each other, to be empathetic, and not just think that things are too far off from you. The you and us. I guess for me that would be the simple and easy. You versus. So you're always pointing fingers. You're always thinking, they've gone off the road. Yeah.
But also remember, you.
Yes.
Look at yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, IMLU, I'm sure, has been very busy and active during this past couple of weeks since the Gen Z protests began. We have seen arrests. We have seen unfortunate incidences of death and injury to people. We have seen reports from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights detailing what they have recorded as injuries, as deaths, as arrests, as abductions. Reports that have been disputed by none other than the president himself, saying these people, sometimes they are over generous with their numbers. From your own independent side, what reports do you have? What are the numbers that you have of the dead, the injured, the arrests, the abductions?
Thank you very much for that question, and a good place to begin. Let me say that number one, we are called the Independent Medical Legal Unit for a reason. One, the independent means that we are completely independent. And so you're right that we verify our information. We have tools that we utilize to verify that information, but also to state that we are part of the Situation Room, which is hosted at Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And therefore, we completely do agree with those numbers. Let me just give a little brief of what happens when calls come in, reports come in, because there are monitors that we engage, human rights defenders on the ground. The public is watching. So any information that is received at the commission, it is analyzed. And a lot of us, different civil society actors, members of the Police Reforms Working Group, sit in that unit, in the Situation Room. We call it a Situation Room. So when that information comes in, it is keyed in, it is analyzed. And then people like us, the Independent Medical Legal Unit, now utilize our tools and systems to undertake further investigations or other documentation. Actually, let me call it documentation. So let me start with what we have at the Situation Room. The Situation Room, and I'll give figures as at the 31st of July. Just so that we are consistent on numbers.
Okay.
So the numbers we had in terms of the persons that were reported to have received injuries at that time was 601 persons. We had 60 deaths that were reported, and we had arrests of over 1429 people. 1,429, and we had abductions at 66 people. People. Now, what we do, so Azimlu will now take that information and then, as I said, utilize our tools to assess further. So we have confirmed, and this doesn't mean that these numbers are not true, because we are a step behind, because for us now we are undertaking the thorough documentation. So we have confirmed that as at that time, the injuries are correct completely. The arrests are correct completely. We have been able to confirm the abductions. But for the abductions, I want to say that 37 of those abductions have been resolved.
Okay.
All right, that people have been found, or persons who lost their lives, unfortunately, have been found. So we have, some of them now translate into the death. Yeah.
Okay.
We still have 26 missing persons, and I'll speak a little about that because it's a very worrying situation. Now, we as IMLU have conducted 45 autopsies from the death, the dead persons. So we are able to confirm and verify the cause of death. And again, I'll be speaking to that. And these are the numbers that are with us. Now, there's a second set of data, and this is data at the Nairobi Funeral Home, City Mortuary. Now, we have 247 bodies that are lying at a City Mortuary, of which 100
All this is at 31st July.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This, the 247, 154 of those have been identified, meaning they are sort of closed. The relatives have been able to identify their kin. So these 154 are known.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah,
The 247 bodies at City Mortuary, does it include bodies that have been brought here by relatives?
Yes, the
That have come from
247.
hospital?
Yes, yes.
So it's all bodies.
It's those bodies
At the City Mortuary.
At the City Mortuary during that period. It's actually from the date of 25th of June to 30th of July. All right. So now, from the 154, there are 62 bodies that are unidentified and who are unknown. Let me call them unknown. They have not been identified. We don't know this is person A, this is person B. All right. Of course, there are records that have been provided by the police, and the records according to the books there indicate accidents, sudden deaths, drowning, suicide, natural deaths. So there are those, supposedly causes of death.
So
all
hold on. This 62 unidentified bodies, how did they end up at City Mortuary?
Now, some are dropped there, some
By?
have been collected by police and taken to the mortuary. So there are different sources. They landed there through different ways.
How many other ways could there be? Yes,
at times people take.
So people will take their relative.
Yeah.
But they'll report.
They'll report. So these 62, we want to confirm are not part of what has been taken by relatives.
Okay.
Because as I said, these are unknown.
Yep.
They're not. If a relative would definitely know I'm taking my kin.
Yep.
So they'll have a name.
And there'll be a record of who
And there'll
brought
be a
the body.
record. So these are police. These are taken in by police.
By police.
Now, so when we say there are 62 unknown, okay, it means that certain processes have to be undertaken for a conclusive determination of who they are. Autopsies need to be done to determine the cause of death. Fingerprinting needs to be done to identify who they are. And DNAs need to be done to also confirm their relations to their next of kin. So there's a long process that has to be finalized.
But against each of these bodies, there's a police report on how they ended up here. The police must have said, picked up at blah, 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 blah. What do those reports say?
Now, that information has not been made public to us. What we have is just what is listed as a cause of death. So 11 accidents, 12 mob injustice, sudden death 11, drowning 10, suicide 2, fire cases 2, natural deaths 3, shooting incidents 3, 1 infant death, 6 murder cases, 1 unknown. No record was given. Okay. But let me just clarify this, that given what has been happening, we do know that there's been a lot of falsification of information and data. So I am insisting on a due process that is provided for to determine the cause of death and who these are and link them to their families. And let me say that it is a very unfortunate situation in Kenya because we have families that are struggling with the loss of their loved ones. We have families looking for their people. They have never been found. Remember the 26 I talked about. And just to say, the 26 are not amongst these ones because the relatives of the 26 have been moving from morgue to morgue looking for their people.
And they're not here.
They're not here.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's an important clarity. And so even as we speak about this, allow me to say my sincere condolences, to pass my sincere condolences to the families that are struggling with the pain and trauma of not knowing where your relatives are, not knowing why they were killed, not knowing if they're alive or dead.
Okay. There's a figure that you did not go into. When IMLU now is doing its own thorough, deeper documentation,
Yes.
you confirm the injured, you confirm the arrests, you've confirmed the abductions, the dead. Do you confirm the 60?
The dead are confirmed as 60.
Okay.
But we've only done autopsies for 45 of them.
Okay.
Okay? We've only conducted 45 autopsies. It's an expensive process. It's a complicated process. It takes time. Yeah? So we've only done 45. We are still going to cover the remaining.
Okay. This 60, they can all be traced. They have a name, they have a relative. They're identified. The 60 confirmed deaths.
Yes. Yes.
There's
yes.
a name
Yes.
to each of them.
Yes.
And it's confirmed with their relatives as well that this is our person.
Yes
They've
and
been
no.
identified, basically. Have they?
In,
Are there unidentified people among these 60 that are dead?
amongst the 60, no. Amongst the 60, these are identified.
Okay.
Yes, these are identified. Amongst the 60, they are known.
Okay.
Yes. The 62 are the unidentified. The 62 that were amongst the 247 in the morgue. Yes.
So the 60 are identified.
Yes.
We know these ones are.
Yes.
And then we have another 60 bodies at
Yeah.
City Mortuary alone.
Yes.
62 bodies at City
Yes.
Mortuary alone that we don't know who
Yes.
they are. Okay.
Yeah.
The abductions. How do we define abduction?
Abduction is when somebody has been taken unwillingly to an undisclosed location. Nobody knows where they are. They were just taken forcefully. They did not go willingly.
Taken by who?
Of course, state agencies.
How do we know?
I think the trend, you have seen it. We've had media, all of us have seen it on mainstream media, people being pushed into cars that are marked. We've seen a good example is the Gaido story. We all saw, and it was announced. We've seen the young people calling out, I've been, somebody saw I was with so-and-so. They have been taken unlawfully. Please find out where they are.
Many times, those arresting them are not in uniform. They are in unmarked vehicles. So how do we know that these are state agencies?
Some have covered their face.
Yes. And that's something we want to talk about because that's a new tactic that is being used by security organs. And it is against all international protocols and laws. The police have to be in uniform. They need to be identifiable. They need to have a badge on them that shows their number, their service number, and their name. But now we've seen them being masked in plain clothes, in unmarked cars. But the operations and the how they abduct you can tell these are trained people. They are carrying weapons that openly they do not conceal. These are not even normal weapons that criminals use to begin with. I mean,
I'm trying to get ahead of this story where the police come and say we are not the ones. Because if they're not identified, we have 66 people who we say have been abducted. 37 of them have been resolved. Either they're found dead or they have been returned and reunited with their families. Okay? And then we still have some 26 who are missing. Those that have come back, how do we know that they had been picked up by authorities? And those that are still missing, the 26, how do we know who picked them up?
okay. Now, from the reports of those that have been found, and this is in the public domain as well, they have a few of them, because it's very, very traumatic, a few of them have come up publicly and have shared their story, their experience, and what they went through. All of them, and the story is consistent, all of them were questioned about their involvement with the protests. All of them were put in vehicles, blindfolded, driven around for hours, put in some cells or a holding. They don't know where exactly it was. Most of them, they were still in blindfolded when they were put in enclosed places. And then later again, driven around for a bit, and then dropped
Abandoned
off.
somewhere.
Abandoned somewhere. Where? Near rivers, near forests. And we have seen bodies that have been thrown in quarries and in rivers. And those bodies have a story to tell. The dead speak. Our reporters, IMLU, says that the dead speak because there's a story. When we do autopsies, we do not do them for the sake of doing them. It is to find the story and to get closure.
So, Grace, how do we know who the abductors are?
So who, Eric, allow me to ask you. Let me just ask you
Throw
this
it back,
question, yeah?
okay.
Who puts you in a vehicle, drives along with you, and asks you about who is funding your protests, and how do you know about IMF, and how do you know about ABCD?
Anybody can do that. Siti and I can actually do that this morning.
We can, and we can ask even more questions than you mentioned. You see, the atmosphere that we have
Yes.
lends itself to an open season situation where if I have a grudge against you, that's all I need to do.
Okay. Then we turn this around. Whose duty is it to protect citizens? It is a state,
That's a good question.
okay?
Yep.
The duty to protect every citizen is the state. And therefore, these abductions should not be happening in broad daylight. They're not even happening in the dark. Yes, a few people have been picked from their homes in the evenings, at night, doors have been knocked. But most of what we've seen has been in broad daylight. A vehicle parks, pushes you into this waiting vehicle, and they drive off with you. So again, if it is not the state, then the state should be out protecting its citizens. Let me tell you, the amount of fear and anxiety we are creating in this country is unbelievable. We are building up anger, frustrations, fear. Those are dangerous elements. Those are really not good places for people to be.
You know, I'm insisting on this question.
Yes.
It's because you told us IMLU has tools, has all these things. Has any of those tools been deployed to try and identify who abducted so and so, who picked up so and so, where were they, how did they come out? Because then we can then use that and go and clear all the shadow of doubt and say these people who picked this person up can be traced back to a police station or a DCI office or NIS, because all these words have been used out there. It is to avoid the president, every time he stands, he says, I promised and I still vow that there shall be no extrajudicial killings or abductions under my administration. That is basically saying that it is not state agencies
Okay.
that are conducting this.
Okay.
So the only way to counter that is not to ask, but who else would it be?
Yeah. Let's use the Gaido case, for example.
Yes,
He was abducted, wasn't he?
he was.
Put into a vehicle.
Yeah.
Where was he driven to? Where was he found? So, in as much as we keep saying, during my tenure, I promise that there will be no extrajudicial killings, there will be no enforced disappearance, that is a statement. But what are the organs that are charged with the mandate and responsibility of allowing and ensuring and safeguarding the freedoms that are provided for in our Constitution doing? How many cases? We have cases of people, again, it's not just Gaido, who the police denied they don't have them in custody. Where were they found? In a police station. Yeah, we have the Kisumu case. We have somebody last week who was actually in a police station, and he was denied access to lawyers, but he had sent out word. So we sent lawyers into the police station. When he was released, somebody who had been abducted and was okay, he had injuries. He's still in a hospital as we speak. This is a human rights defender. So the narrative that is being put out there that these are not state organs is not the right thing. And I can assure you that not just as a lot of people have documented these cases. At the moment, we cannot disclose and give all the details because these are open cases that are going to go to a court of law. Some are already in court. Yeah? And people have documented their experiences. So even when they don't say that I was in X police station because we're not able to identify the police station, the manner, demeanor of the questions, their statements. By the way, we have a lot of witness statements that we've already taken, a lot of them. So we have all these details, and it's not just us. And they're not just stored with us, just so that, again, I declare that if anyone is looking for evidence to destroy, please do not just come to us because this evidence is in a lot of different places. We've ensured that. Okay? And it will see the light of day. I think Kenyans have said, we really want justice. We want a change. Eric, how do you ensure change if you cannot start by acknowledging the mistakes that the government has made, the mistakes that security organs have made, and saying, from now, we will use the law and we will enforce what is provided for in the law, and we will safeguard the rights and freedoms of Kenyans. If we don't do that now, we are continuing to build anger amongst Kenyans.
Good one. Let's take a break. It's 25 minutes to 8. Our guest this morning is Grace Wangeshi. She is the Executive Director of IMLU, the Independent Medical Legal Unit. We are talking about safety of protesters ahead of tomorrow's Nane Nane, but also looking back at what has happened so far in the protests. Number of injured, number of dead, 60 people confirmed dead, 601 injured, 1,429 arrested, and there are many who've been abducted, 66 of them, 26 are still missing. But we still have some bodies lying at the city mortuary that are still unidentified, and how they ended up there is still in question. 62 people, not bodies, 62 people are at city mortuary. And nobody knows who they are. Okay, that's a big one.
This is the situation.
Get ready for incredible savings with our special factory prices on all tile profiles. Enjoy unbeatable discounts on our Gauge 28 matte, Gauge 30 matte finish, and glossy Gauge 30 tiles. Choose from a variety of matte finishes including Germania tile, Jamie tile, Espana tile, Roman Jamie tile, and Jamiz tile. The Gauge 28 matte was 820 Kenya shillings, now just 745 per meter. And the Gauge 30 matte was 680 Kenya shillings, now slashed to only 625 per meter. And that's not all. Our box Jamie tile, previously 575, is now only 499 Kenya shillings per meter. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Visit our factory outlets in Kitengela or Meru, or place your order today by calling 0729 628 199 or 0740-229-609. Rhino Mabati. Do it best on top.
Nivea Pearl and Beauty Deodorant. The perfect balance of 48-hour protection and care for soft, smooth, and beautiful underarms. Try our new Pearl and Beauty Black Pearl for smooth and perfumed underarms.
A brand new season of The Art of Living is here. You will not believe whom we have in store for you this season.
I usually buy during a sale, but I'm also a very hard negotiator.
Their homes are nothing short of magnificent, exquisite, and unique.
I think it just brings out that girlish era that I am in.
This season, the bar is raised.
Once I started Floral, it just seemed to be themed all over.
Take a vicarious journey with me and let's discover, explore, and engage.
Majuka ni kama unarusha mamikono tingisha kichwa chungu sivunje kisogo teremuka kakonokono basi ni kionjo twende mamiondoko
Ukaju, banjuka juu. Life ni fupi na misi jifundi. Naweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu.
Banjuka tu, hey! Nasema tena banjuka tu, hey! Bila kujali
Kono moja mbele, ngine yende rembe Paila, yoni ganja rende Zungusha kiuno alafu wacha iende
Gota, tena strictly makwela, no other gender. Gota, tena petit, lina weza but big ndio.
Dance ya kudonje ni dance ya majuu. Dance kishika unazungusha mguu. Right to the left unazungushia juu. Any dance ya majuu.
Muru Road into Muthaiga and out of Muthaiga is fine.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Our conversation continues with the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit, Grace Wangeshi, on safety of protesters. City.
You know, the problem with a situation such as the one we have, I mentioned in passing that it's for some people an opportunity to do things that they, in ordinary circumstances, when we didn't have the disturbances, they could not do. That's one. Two, I've had conversations with members of the security forces in this country, and one of the things that I've raised with some of the ones I know is this very thing we're discussing, the disappearances. And let me just mention what one of these individuals whom I know told me. Said, you know, we have a problem, they said, with criminals. Said, some are people who were in the service as we are, some are not. Said, the problem is, even when you have arrested someone and you think they are going through the process, so there's usually no guarantee that they'll even end up in jail. Okay? Said, and some are repeat criminals, and the longer they stay away in power, I mean, the longer they stay out of jail, the greater the danger they cause. But they also told me that the other danger is their own life. Said, if you are the arresting officer and this person is not in jail, your life is also in danger. Now, I'm reporting what I was told. So they say some of the times the things that people see and understand may look like it is cruel. They said, but they cannot always reveal why it is they do what they do. That is what I've reported. But my understanding of the situation as I see it, especially with our security forces, is something that was brought up here by one of our guests. When you have a security service like the police service, who live in the manner that they live, who are paid the sort of salaries they're paid, who are not facilitated as properly as they ought to, who are not given the wherewithal and an ecosystem within which they can carry out their functions properly, whether it's being provided with adequate vehicles, whether it's being provided with whatever it is they need to carry out their duties. The net result is you have a force that is traumatized. It may not appear so, because you cannot have people who seem to find it normal to inflict pain and to kill people and to do the sort of things that we do unless that individual is that way inclined. And the only way people get that way inclined is either you are born with a psychological defect or you're somebody who in your life, it's something you experience. So meeting it out is not very difficult. Now, that is what I have surmised. Now, let me tell you my thoughts. It's in the form of a question. When we fight for the rights of the citizens, the police, men and women, are also citizens. Who fights for their rights? Because they also have rights.
Okay. Very, very good question. Now, IMLO convenes a network of 23 organizations. And our network is called the Police Reforms Working Group. So let me start at that. Now, why this network came to be is to look at the rights and welfare of the police as well, and what reforms are necessary for Kenyans to enjoy their freedoms, their fundamental freedoms as provided in law. Now, two things. One, there's absolutely no way as a state agent that you can say, because I'm not adequately equipped, because I am not, I don't have the provisions in terms of proper housing, in terms of whatever, that I will mete out my frustrations on Kenyans or on citizens. You can never do that. That is a line you can never cross, never. However, you also have fundamental rights, absolutely. And if you go back to the Maraga report, the task force report, it highlights a lot of these things in regards to police welfare, in regards to how their training, in regards to the equipment, access to medical services. All that is there. And the police service commission and the state organs are supposed to ensure that the police are taken care of. But that does not in any way, and should never in any way, influence how you treat a citizen. Number one, you're paid by taxpayers' money. Number two, you are trained through taxpayers' money. Number three, you opted to take this up as a job, as a role, and you were sworn in to the protection and safeguarding of rights. You can never go back on this. Kenya has ratified all these international instruments. The International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the Protection Against Torture, all this, and we have a constitution to begin with. So let's separate the issues. It is true, there are many issues around the police welfare, training. In fact, one of the big things and the gaps in training is around human rights. It's around professionalism. How do they understand human rights? They are, being able to perform in a professional manner. That is what now you're talking about. So professionalism means I have this responsibility and mandate. I will uphold myself to the highest standards possible. I can never negate that. It does not matter.
It's an oath you saw anyway.
It's an oath you saw. Yes.
But doctors swear
and a ground.
an oath as well. Do they not?
And let me just say this. We are actually, the Police Reforms Working Group has been working with the National Police Service, with different organs, to provide technical support, to agree on areas we can support, improve, and also push for their rights and welfare. So we're also doing that. We are even ready, and we do offer psychosocial support because they also go through trauma. Yeah? So let's not mix things. The oath is so fundamental. You cannot play around with an oath.
Let me go back to the statement I made. Doctors take an oath, do they not?
Yes,
now,
they
having
do.
taken that oath, they have the ability to do something the police cannot do. They have a union, they go on strike. Why? Because certain fundamental rights that they have been abrogated. Certain understandings that they have not been met. When the doctors go on strike, do they seek to have people die? No. But do people die? Yes. Do people, are there individuals who are unattended to? Yes. The police cannot go on strike. So if they have rights that are being abrogated, they cannot in any way have any industrial action or demonstrate about the problems that they have. That's why I raised the question. I'm going to disagree with you on a little point here. Much as I would like to separate issues, we actually cannot. Our experiences make us who we are. Whether it is the lived experience as a child, my experience in my training where I went to school, my experience in the work I do and the people I work with, they all influence us and they all determine the way we behave. If I look at the ecosystem within which somebody who works in the police service what they encounter on a daily basis, we cannot say that it doesn't influence or affect their lives, and it doesn't affect the outcomes of how they relate to the citizenry. It does. And that's why the mitigating circumstances that led to the question asked has to be asked and then has to be addressed. Because if they can't do what the rest of us can do, and yet they also have rights, and that the same government that falls short of meeting the things that we desire, falls short of meeting what they desire, the effort that IMLU makes is laudable. But a lot more needs to be done, and beyond IMLU. IMLU may be stretched to their limits, but IMLU cannot do what it is that the government is actually supposed to do.
Absolutely. We are in total agreement. In fact, what we do is simply demand for accountability. We simply demand that the rights that we have ratified within the international instruments, that the rights provided for in our constitution are safeguarded. Why do we have the rule of law? It is to set in place certain standards so that we have a functional country, so that democracy can be upheld, so that people's rights, opinions, voice can be heard. Why are people protesting? Why are people picketing? It is because there are certain things they want to communicate. It is because they want to get audience. It is because they want their issues to be heard, and heard by the right person, heard by the right offices, and not just heard but actioned upon. And when I say that people are getting angry and frustrated, it is because, yes, at times we hear, yes, at times the government hears, but are they actioning on what change the people want? It's not like the Gen Zs have nothing to do. It's not like they're not putting their lives at risk. It's not like Kenyans don't have anything to do. When people go out on the streets, they are going out there because we want a better Kenya. They want a better Kenya. IMLU and its partners in the Police Reforms Working Group and other civil society organizations are there to ensure that the space is conducive for people to be heard, for government to deliver on its mandate. And so, yes, in some ways, you cannot negate, of course, the rights and welfare of state officers. That's fundamental. However, you cannot, and my point is, and I'll insist on this point, you cannot say that because I am not adequately remunerated or resourced, then I will pour out my frustration on the people I'm supposed to safeguard. That's my point. You cannot do that. So right now, the Constitution, Article 37, provides for the right to peaceably protest. And so if there's a notice that we're going to protest, the police have been trained on how to handle the public, how to safeguard, how to crowd control. Let them adhere to those procedures as long as the protests are ongoing and they are peaceful. That has been provided for. And I think the conversation around tomorrow, because I have heard the acting IG's message, yesterday. If we uphold the Constitution and we provide for the protests to go on without the infiltration by goons and people who come to cause violence, it will be peaceful and people can go back home. We have witnessed many peaceful protests here. And I think it is important that we say, let the law be followed, because that's why we have a law. Why did we invest in having a constitution if we're not going to adhere to it or safeguard it because somebody's welfare is not being, it's in want? I don't believe in that.
How do you ensure this balance? Because yes, there are very many people who want to come out to protest just to make sure that their voice is heard, and they are peaceful. They want to do it peaceably, lawfully, and follow all guidelines.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then there may be those who are coming who are otherwise motivated. They have either been paid or they have been, recruited, or they have been told, okay, you guys go there, but make sure that these peaceful ones are not as loud as they are. All right. How do you guard against that?
Okay.
If you're a police officer, if you're a fellow demonstrator, how do you do it?
Yeah. Now, I like the call the Gen Zs have made. They have said we want to have a peaceful protest. And they have said, goons, whoever is hiring people, please do not infiltrate. They have made a passionate call that I have seen in the media. It's everywhere. Now, what the law provides for, and I want to read the duties of and obligations of duty bearers. Respect and protect the rights of individuals to express their views and assemble peacefully. Use non-violent methods to manage and de-escalate situations to avoid unnecessary force. They have been trained on how to de-escalate situations. They have been trained on use of appropriate force, measures that quell and calm, the situation. There was a court ruling in Malindi recently that banned the police from using excessive force. So upholding the law, this is a court ruling. When we disregard a court ruling, what does that speak to? So in regards to the balance, Eric, there are lots, there's, and we've actually issued as IMLU and other partners, the do's and don'ts, Issue warnings before taking enforcement actions, giving people a chance to comply, ensure access to medical aid for anyone who's injured, wear police uniform, be identifiable by badge number, to promote accountability. The issue of having people in plain clothes holding guns and big machines and being part of the crowd control, and back to the question you asked, they cannot be part of the crowd control in police uniform if they're not police. I mean, how? How? So in as much as we are saying the narrative is the people who abducted are not police, it's a false narrative. It is a false narrative because police would never allow you to stand with them and crowd control. I mean, unless really we've lost it. We've lost complete control. So if that is what we are saying, then it's a different conversation. But I do believe, and I have confidence, that if we changed our attitude, the National Police Service can actually do a good job. They can do a good job and manage the protests and actually stand out and say, we lived within the provisions of the law, we've allowed and enabled Kenyans to express themselves, and they can be celebrated. They can set standards. It's never too late to change. I am appealing that we go back to the Constitution, we go back to the training. And I'm also appealing, if you have been paid as a goon, if there's anyone out there planning to infiltrate, please stop it. Kenya belongs to all of us. It belongs to all of us. Let's have peaceful protests. It's a right. It will never stop. Because there are things I will not agree with. There are things, Eric, you'll not agree with. You need somebody to listen to you.
We have SACCOs. We have Matatu SACCOs. Teachers have SACCOs. Civil servants have SACCOs. Do goons have SACCOs?
Nice question. I have no idea. I have no idea, but somebody who pays them is listening.
The voice that is listened to in this country, and it has been demonstrated, the goons would never have come out if the protesters were not being effective. And the goons, it's a career path that some people have chosen, and they have found that in one way or the other it pays. Otherwise they wouldn't bother with it. But what I fear is not that it is a career path, that is a growth industry. That is what I fear. And if you look at the genesis of it, there are people in society who have always been rogue. They exist. But they're always fewer than the rest of us. But when you have leaders in authority disregarding, for instance, court orders, like the immediate former president, what do you think you set in motion in terms of telling the citizenry and how they should relate to the law and to pronouncements by the courts?
Exactly. Very good point. If the peaceful protests were not successful, there would be no goons on the street.
None.
There would be absolutely no goons on the street. And it therefore means that there is a space and place for the protests. Change only happens because somebody stands up and says, I'm not going to uphold status quo anymore because things need to be done differently. Now, these goons, it's so unfortunate that they have seen an opportunity and gotten in. But I still go back to the person who's charged with the responsibility to manage them. The National Police Service. By the way, they can single them out in a crowd. They know them.
They do.
Their demeanor, the way they act, what they carry is telling.
Well, they know them even by name.
They even know them by name, some of them. So there's no way they are not able to manage them. There is absolutely no way they are not able to manage them if they wanted. And that's why I'm saying change of attitude, behaviors. That has to happen. We must change our attitude. And the Maraga report is very clear on that. Attitude of the police, attitude, behavior. I have been trained. I mean, let's go back to a gory picture in our minds. How do you have a sniper shooting down at innocent young people? How? How do you use live ammunition on young people of this great land of ours who are carrying nothing but a placard, piece of paper, and a phone? What justification would you ever have? And so it goes back to goodwill. But if the president stood and said, allow them to picket because it's their right, as long as it's within the confines of the law. Just provide escort security for them. Don't interfere. Let's listen. Give an audience. Because when you're protesting, you're actually giving your voice to somebody. There's somebody you're giving out your protest to, your request, your petitions. Do you know that statement would make a very big difference? And if somebody stood and said, by the way, we acknowledge that the state has failed in safeguarding the rights of Kenyans, that we have 601 people injured, and we take responsibility that we have lost 60 people. By the way, remember, last year during the Maandamanos, we lost 67 people.
Yep.
Any acknowledgement or action?
None.
None.
Doesn't come. Grace, we hope that tomorrow will actually be peaceful, like you said.
Yeah.
Grace Wangeshi is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. We've been talking about safety of protesters. There's a law that says that you have a right to protest. There's a police that's supposed to safeguard your safety and all. Let's make it peaceful. 8 a.m. news time.